Hello, my name is Dr. Uminde and I'm going to discuss anatomy of spleen. Spleen is a lymphoid organ that's located in the left hypochondriac region of the abdomen. It's in the left hypochondriac region and it's located between the stomach anteriorly and the diaphragm anteriorly. So the spleen usually lies opposite to the 9th, 10th, 11th ribs on the left side. So it lies opposite the 9th to 11th ribs, and its long axis actually corresponds to the axis of the 10th rib. It lies the 9th, 10th, 11th ribs, and its long axis corresponds with the axis of the 10th rib. So the spleen, just the liver, has a diaphragmatic surface and a visceral surface. Diaphragmatic surface is usually smooth and convex. That's the diaphragmatic surface. So it's called diaphragmatic surface because it's related to the diaphragm. And diaphragm actually separates the spleen from the part of the left pleura containing the left lung, and also then separates the spleen from the 9th to 11th left ribs. So that's the diaphragmatic surface of the spleen. Then it has a visceral surface. So the visceral surface is concave and it is the abdominal cavity. So that's the visceral surface of the spleen. It has a hilum. Now, the hilum of the spleen, just like the hilum of other organs, contains neurovascular structures. You have blood vessels, lymphatics, and nerves that are coming to the spleen. So the visceral surface of the spleen also has impressions for other organs. So you have posteriorly, you have left kidney and left suprarenal gland. Anteriorly, the visceral surface has a groove for the stomach, and inferiorly, you have the groove splenic flexure of the colon. The hilum, the spleen is usually grooved by the tail of the pancreas. Those are the relations or impressions on the visceral surface of the spleen. Now, spleen has two borders. You have a superior border and inferior border. The superior border usually has 2-3 splenic notches. So this is the superior border. You can appreciate splenic notches here. This is the inferior border. So superior border has 2 to 3 splenic notches, and actually these notches are palpable when the spleen is enlarged. So they actually serve as good landmarks because palpable when the spleen is enlarged. Then the spleen has an inferior border. Now, we have peritoneal reliefs of the spleen. So it's important to know that the spleen is actually covered completely by the peritoneum and forms the left lateral extremity of the lesser sac, and it has 2 peritoneal ligaments. So you have the spleen covered by peritoneum completely, and this peritoneum forms left lateral extremity of the lesser sac. Now, we have 2 peritoneal ligaments in this peritoneum covering the spleen. So we have the gastrosplenic ligament. We can ask you to list 2 contents of the gastrosplenic ligament. This is a ligament from the stomach to the spleen. So it carries short gastric and left gastrocloic vessels. Remember, these are branches from splenic artery and tributaries of splenic vein. So gastrosplenic ligament has short gastric and left gastrocloic vessels. Then we have glenorenal ligament. Glenorenal, also called splenorenal ligament. What are the 5 contents of the splenorenal ligament? You have splenic vessels, the tail of the pancreas, you have nerves and lymphatics, as well as extraperitoneal fatty tissue. So those are the contents of the splenorenal ligament. Splenic vessels, tail of the pancreas, and lymphatics, nerve fibers, which are autonomic nerve fibers, and extraperitoneal fatty tissue. Stability of the spleen. What provides the stability of the spleen? It keeps it in position. So number 1, we have intra-abdominal pressure, then position of surrounding organs, so they fit in place, and then we have the ligaments. So the splenorenal ligament, the gastrocolic ligaments. We also have phrenicocholic ligament. This phrenicocholic ligament extends below the spleen between the left cholic flexure, which is the splenic flexure, and the diaphragm. That's why it's called phrenicocholic, between the diaphragm and the splenic flexure. So we have various developmental anomalies of the spleen. The spleen, you can have complete agenesis of spleen, where it doesn't develop. You can have multiple spleens, which I call polyspleen. Then remember, the spleen usually has various origins that usually fuse. So if they fail to fuse, you can have multiple spleen or polysplenia. Then you can have spleniculi, which are or persistent lobulation of the spleen. So asplenia or polysplenia. Asplenia is no spleen. Polysplenia is when you have multiple spleens. They're usually associated with other anomalies, such as cardiac and pulmonary anomalies. Accessory spleens are very common in neonates, and they're located mainly in greater omentum. At birth, the spleen is on average 13 grams. But in the postnatal year, the first year after birth, the weight now doubles, and by the end of the third year, so when a child is 3 years of age, the weight of the spleen now triples. So we have what we call splenectomy. Remember, we said the spleen is a lymphoid organ, so it contains cells, immune cells that are able to fight pathogens, and the spleen also destroyed worn out or abnormally shaped blood cells. So worn out cells and abnormally shaped blood cells are destroyed in the spleen. So we have what you call splenectomy. Splenectomy is when you surgically remove the spleen. So for example, in trauma, when you fracture the rib and rupture the spleen, there'll be massive bleeding, and to control the bleeding, splenectomy can be indicated. Remember, during splenectomy, you have to be careful so that you do not affect the tail of the pancreas, which is at the hilum. We have what we call splenomegaly. Splenomegaly is pathological enlargement of the spleen. Yeah, and we see it when the spleen is enlarged, actually splenic notch is palpable. So we get to see splenomegaly in conditions like leishmaniasis, recurrent malaria cases, patients with sickle cell, the spleen is overworking. Yeah, so in such cases, there is splenomegaly, because the spleen, remember, has to destroy worn out or abnormally shaped blood cells. So any condition where you have spleen overworking will be enlarged. So next we discuss the pancreas. The pancreas is an elongated gland that's in the posterior abdominal wall. It lies transversely. So it extends the concavity or the shape of the duodenum, which is on the right, and terminates at the hilum of spleen, which is on the left. So it's from the concavity of the duodenum right to the hilum of the spleen on the left. So the pancreas is situated in the lower part of the epigastric region. It's in the lower part of the epigastric region of the abdomen. So this is pancreas. You have the head, the neck, the body, and the tail of the pancreas. And we usually have an uncinate process between the head and the neck. Head, uncinate process, neck, body, and tail. So it runs from the C of the duodenum to the hilum of the spleen, where you have the tail. So the head of the pancreas is the expanded right part of the pancreas, and it's at the concavity of the duodenum. It's usually flattened anterior and posterior surface, but the lower part of the head projects behind superior mesenteric vessels, and that's what forms the uncinate process. Projection of the head of the spleen behind the superior mesenteric vessels. So again, is the head, the uncinate process, the tail of the spleen. What are the relations of the spleen? Anteriorly, you have the transverse colon and the coils of the jejunum, as well as superior mesenteric vessels. Transverse colon, jejunum, and superior mesenteric vessels. Posterior to the spleen, you have common bile duct, inferior vena cava, and the termination of renal veins, and the aorta. Anteriorly, you have CBD, IVC, and aorta. So superiorly, laterally, and inferiorly, the head of the spleen is related to the duodenum. Then the neck of the head of the pancreas is related to the duodenum. The neck of the pancreas is usually narrow and joins the head with the body. So the neck joins the head with the body and is related anteriorly to the pyloroduodenal junction. So posteriorly to junction between the superior mesenteric and splenic vein, that you find the neck of the pancreas. So the body of the pancreas crosses the median plane opposite L1. The body of the pancreas crosses median plane opposite L1. This body of pancreas is triangular in cross-section and has three borders. A superior border related to the splenic artery, an anterior border giving attachment to the transverse mesocolon, and an inferior related to the jejunum. So superior border related to the splenic artery, anteriorly to the transverse mesocolon, and inferiorly to the coils of the jejunum. So you can appreciate C of the duodenum. You can appreciate the superior mesenteric vessels, the inferior vena cava. This is the body and the of the pancreas. So the surfaces, the pancreas has two surfaces. So we've done the borders. Now, surfaces of the pancreas. Anteriorly, it's related to the stomach and separated from the stomach by the lesser sac. Then in the surface of the spleen, related to the duodenojejunal flexure and the coils of the jejunum. So in face you have duodenal flexure and the jejunum. Then posteriorly the spleen, the pancreas is not covered in peritoneum. What structures are located posterior to the pancreas? You have a aorta and superior mesenteric artery originating from it. You have splenic and left renal veins, the left cruciate diaphragm and psoas major muscle, left knee and left suprarenal. So those are the posterior relations of the pancreas. Aorta and superior mesenteric, splenic and left veins, left cruciate of the diaphragm and psoas major muscle, as well as left kidney and left suprarenal gland on superior pole. So those are the details regarding the body of the pancreas. Then we now go to the tail pancreas. Tail is the narrow left extremity of the gland, and it is between two layers of the splenomegaly ligament. It's attached to the glenorenal ligament. Then it comes into direct contact with the visceral surface of the spleen. We said it grooves the skin around the hilum, and it's closely related to the splenic vessels. Then we have two ducts of the spleen. We have the main pancreatic duct of Wilson, and this is the one we said the main pancreatic duct of Wilson unite common bile duct at the ampulla of Vater on the second part of the duodenum. Then we also have an accessory duct of the pancreas. It's called pancreatic duct of Santorini, and usually this drains the uncinate portion of the pancreas as well as the lower part of the head. So it runs towards in front of the main duct to open 1 inch above the major ampulla of Vater. So opens above the major ampulla of Vater. This is the ampulla of Vater, you can see CBD and main pancreatic duct. But 1 inch above it is the accessory pancreatic duct of Santorini that drains uncinate process and lower part of the head of the pancreas. So applied anatomy, we have pancreatitis, which is inflammation of the pancreas, and this one is usually related mainly to high alcohol intake, and pancreatitis may be acute over a short period of time or may be chronic. So in the next lecture series, we'll discuss the anatomy of the duodenum. Thank you.